You're listening to Inside Content, the TV industry podcast. This show is brought to you by 3Vision, a global TV industry consultancy specialising in content acquisition, strategy, research and business development. Each episode, we give you VIP access to the views and experiences of senior TV executives and discuss the latest TV industry trends and insights.
Hello and welcome to Inside Content. I'm Peyton Lombardo, manager at 3Vision, and today I'm joined by Marc Rashba, EVP of Global Streaming Tech and Entertainment Company Cineverse. On this episode, we discuss the key factors affecting the future of FAST, the growing relevance of YouTube, and balancing FAST versus AVOD initiatives. Alrighty, welcome to our Insight Content podcast. I'm here today with EVP of Cineverse, Marc Rashba. Marc, can you start out by giving our listeners an overview of your role within Cineverse?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, by the way. I appreciate it. It's great being part of this. I wanted to let you know, as part of being head of partnerships at Cineverse, the role is pretty broad in terms of we look after channels around the globe. We manage 29 channels. Half of those are O&O, which is owned and operated. And then the other half or so are third party, where we license in IP brands and content companies that we distribute. So we look after the growth and expansion of all those channels around the globe onto platforms, as well as we license out a deep library that we bring into our company from other companies. So we have over 70,000 titles that we manage and oversee. And we also distribute still in the home entertainment space, both digitally, which is where the strength of the market is, on what's called TVOD and EST. And also, of course, we're still distributing on key releases into the last of physical media with Blu-ray and DVD into the market. And we'll release theatrically through other partners, but so we'll do a handful of theatricals each year as well. So we look after all of that and all the partnerships that help grow our business and other people's businesses.
Great. Thanks, Marc, for that intro. Let's jump into it. And let's talk about FAST, the topic that everybody seems to be talking about in the industry. So what is your general thoughts on FAST these days, Marc?
Well, FAST is certainly dominating the media and continues to be a central part of many conversations that we have. But one, I have to now change my language in emails. I actually have to use the word quick. Otherwise, people automatically confuse that I'm talking about the FAST category for distribution. But what's happening really, certainly there's been a bifurcation of FAST. So you have the US market, and then you have everywhere else. And what we've seen happening is clearly the US has been at a saturation point, and that ultimately leads to platforms deciding that it is a sort of a transitory business, that you have to prove yourself every month, because there is no room for new partners or new channels to come in unless other channels fall towards that bottom tier or the bottom rung, where they're going to be reevaluated, typically quarterly by most platforms. And the lower performers that aren't bringing in an audience or doing their part of the heavy lifting will ultimately be discontinued, or as we call it in the industry, sunset, and likely never to come back. So it's become that kind of business that in the older MVPD days, if you were a channel, you would set it up with all the different MVPD platforms, and you wouldn't have to worry about it for like 7 or 8 years. You can focus on growing an audience and programming and doing stunts and marketing, but you didn't have to worry about Time Warner taking you off the system for low performance. So that's a little bit of the landscape of what you're looking at now. So in the US, and then while it's saturated, it doesn't mean there's no opportunities. Others come in all the time. There's new audiences always being discovered with a great channel, a great programming. But we're looking at growth certainly outside of the US. There's a number of markets that are early entries that are starting to show real performance. And we are continuing our strategy to not only be focused on fast, but to make sure we're matching the content to the right potential audience, and that would be potentially going after AVOD, YouTube, and other places to really prove there's an audience, to prove the channel has merit and is viable, and then we may discuss doing the heavy lift, which is typically fast, which has a lot more investment and a lot more involvement from various parties to get that off the ground.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're totally right in the fact that the US market is completely different to the rest of the world, as we're seeing the rest of the world, develop internationally and how those are performing compared to the US.
Yeah, well, I'll include Canada is certainly on its way. We sometimes lump it into the US business, but that is absolutely growing an audience. Australia, of the last number of months, has been showing some real growth in that market. There's a number of partners, traditional companies that you would know of down in that market, that are now launching fast tiers. They are broadcasters or they're satellite companies, and they went from sort of tiptoeing into the space to finally putting the chips on the table. And we're seeing some really strong traction. You do have to scale it to the size of the market, of course. But typically, if you're a U.S.-based company with dominated by U.S. or English content, you're going to always want to navigate and go out into your English language markets, because you don't have to necessarily put the investment in content dubs or subs. So with that in mind, we would typically go out to those markets. So we're in the UK, of course, and Australia. We're kicking the tires in New Zealand, as are other companies. And, that's sort of the first pass. And then when we have good learnings and good insights, then we start to look at other markets. Certainly LATAM's a big market we're getting into. We have a lot of Spanish language content that'll work automatically in a number of countries in one shot. And then we're being really judicious about other big growth markets for fast, like Germany or France or Italy, because you do have to put the investment into the subs or dubs, and you want to really make sure you're placing your bets wisely. And that's with respect to fast. And there's other ways you can go into those markets and test, but that's where we're focusing. And I think, we're starting to see real penetration and traction in those markets that wasn't there even just a year ago. So I think in the next, year, 2 years, you'll continue to see that trajectory. And it's a nice ancillary business. But I don't know necessarily if you could anchor your model in one of those territories at this time and find a good financial model that's going to work for you as a business.
Yeah. And, earlier you had mentioned about, studios and broadcasters getting involved. And so we're seeing more content than ever in the fast space. And so one of the key things that, content owners are going to need to do in fast is discoverability. Can you talk about what Cineverse is doing in this space?
Absolutely. There's two key pieces that are the last areas that are commonly discussed that I think are the big differentiators for fast, especially, and to a degree AVOD. That is discoverability, and then the other piece of that is personalization. You have a different experience with this new generation of Gen Z, even millennials for that matter, that everyone that was weaned on social media and the benefits of social and the algorithms that are phenomenal in that business and in that category are able to cater your absolute content needs to your specific watch history, and you are served a very different experience than anyone else on your street or neighborhood apartment or what have you, because everything is so customized. So the connected TV business and our world is not necessarily as as efficient as that yet, but we're moving towards there because we see what's happening in the market. And you'll have some fundamental things, you obviously, if you're using any kind of streaming service, many of the big utilities will have a personalized icon when you log in to which member of the household is watching, and then it'll pull up your watch list or continue watching where you left off, and it'll try to serve you similar titles to something you're watching. So that does exist. But in the world of FAST, it's certainly something new. And we're looking at that at Cinesearch. We, through our Matchpoint end-to-end digital technology, which helps scale and helps take out a lot of costs for not only our business, but other partners to distribute content. One of the products that we've announced is Cinesearch. It's in partnership with a major search company, and it's an AI-driven tool that allows you to, at the very beginning of your navigational experience on a platform, you'll be able to sort of talk about what you're in the mood for. If you're in the mood for Westerns, if you're in the mood for something sad, and you'll be able to ask the AI operator with an icon set up to ultimately you'll be able to design that to look like any kind of character you would like. But you'll be able to talk in a voice-activated experience of what you're looking for. And then the AI tool and the search technology will be able to help you find what you're looking for. And it'll help you discover things that you might not necessarily knew existed without you scrolling through channel after channel after channel after you've navigated through the EPG. And that's an amazing thing. There's other people out there that are doing some really neat things. We've got a partnership with another company that's going to start putting like little mini sizzle reels in the EPG. So you don't have to navigate through, but if you see something that looks interesting, like an action sizzle reel, you'll be able to watch maybe it's about 15 to 30 second clip, and then you'll just be able to click right within the clip and it'll take you to the channels that are clustered together around that kind of topic, whether that's action, whether that's sports, whether it's romance. So there are a lot of new technologies that are coming to the scene that are going to make that experience more unique and more driven towards personalization and discoverability.
That's really interesting about what you just said. When can we expect to see those, the search and recommendation things that you just mentioned being implemented?
They're both in beta now. We're doing a trade-only rollout, but I imagine you could see an implementation with a particular partner probably as early as the end of the year, early next year, because there is a lot of tech that has to connect properly and make it work. But the other piece that I was mentioning as an example, that's I believe live in some markets, not in the US necessarily. I think they're testing it elsewhere right now. So I would expect you can see samples of both of these as early as the end of the year.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to that. Sounds really cool. Shifting a little bit away from FAST, but I guess, comparing FAST to other OTT, you guys do a lot of, operations that are not just FAST. Can you talk about, the balance of maintaining audiences on your FAST channels versus your pay TV platforms?
Absolutely. What you're going to see is a really unique experience because each audience sort of navigates and chooses to experience content differently. And we, as I mentioned, we have about 29 channels. And for us, we look at it as a macro level channel basis. But then when you get into the consumption of each of those brands or channels, it's a very different experience and different audience for each of the ways they consume it. So for instance, we have a channel called Asian Crush. And Asian Crush is available in subscription model. It's available as AVOD, and it's available for FAST. And typically, like many other partners and many other companies in the market, you're going to put some of your premium best titles behind the paywall in your subscription model. But what happens in FAST and AVOD is really unique. So we learned in that in the FAST channel, we're getting much more consumption with females in a lean back fast experience on K-dramas, and more of that kind of romance story coming out of Korea. And whereas on the AVOD version of Asian Crush, it's definitely more male oriented. And they are selecting martial arts movies, Asian action dramas, and it's really unique to see that you do get subset audiences that consume your own content on the same channel very differently by each of these different formats. And that's something that we have to think about when we're looking at the programming strategy for each of those brands across the board.
That's really interesting what you've noted about the viewing habits of your audiences on different platforms. Does that impact your programming strategy for linear versus on demand?
Exactly. In terms of what we're offering up in our guides on the app, you'll have a very different flow case and an experience of what you're going to see or what's going to be recommended compared to the other experiences you might see through the other formats. So we have to keep that in mind on each of our channels as we program them. And we have to keep in mind day parts when you're looking at FAST, because we'll typically have a singular feed in the US. So we'll be very mindful of what works in prime time and then what time that would be on the West Coast versus East Coast. And there's a lot more thought about day parting and the audience that follows that particular channel. Whereas it's a little less involved as you look at your AVOD or D2C app experiences, and SVOD for that matter.
Interesting. So moving on to YouTube, you guys are hugely active on YouTube. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically, what happens is, and I know this is the same case with both our platform partners and colleagues who are in this industry. I will have to convince somebody not to go the fast route at least once or twice a week, because a lot of people get excited, they read about it, but they don't understand that the investment of both money and time that it takes to go from zero to being up with a viable fast channel and having it monetize, positively for you. You're going to need a number of platforms for that to work, and there's costs in there. So what's happened around the same time frame is that there's been you could call it a resurgence of sorts of commercial YouTube. So we're not talking about the world of influencers that clearly YouTube continues to dominate in that space. And even with TikTok on the scene, regardless of what's happening with regulation and the law part of it, YouTube's still the dominant global partner. And what YouTube's been able to do is it serves basically, it's an AVOD outlet that we're able to use, but it's unique in the way that it's designed and set up. It is not an HLS feed like you do for FAST. It is not a channel feed that they'll support, but it is the original sort of AVOD platform. And now what's happening is, unlike the origins of what you might think of YouTube as just short form clips and influencers, they are many, many people that have found their way to YouTube. And certainly because YouTube is easily available on most smart televisions with their app, that you're able to access traditional YouTube on your beautiful high-def television. There's been a major growth in consumption of long-length content, meaning episodic TV and films. And what we've been able to do is, through each of those channel brands, we've expanded the brand to YouTube, not only to promote the fact that we are on OTT or a particular programming block or a particular marketing campaign, But more importantly, it is a lean back experience with ads to watch your favorite movies with ads, an experience that people are very accustomed to. And that has been working phenomenally well for us. We have a number of partners that we work with that are experts in the YouTube category. They understand the algorithms. They have great relationships with all the YouTube folks on the ground in the particular markets. YouTube is automatically global, though you're able to filter it out geographically for markets where your content may not be cleared. And once you're set and ready to go, the experts know how to tap into that. And we have had nothing but a fantastic experience with it. We took a brand that was on AVOD channels in the US with OTT. They had been working directly with YouTube, and their videos, they were working it here and there. And unless you work YouTube every single day, number of times a day, you're not going to start to see the results that you would want. And we turned it over to one of our partners, and they went from a few thousand views after, I think, about a month to over 100,000 views in, I think, less than a week. And now it's continuing to grow and find its audience because you turned it over to the people that really know how to work it. So companies are either going to need to invest in a team, internal team, who understand that YouTube is not just another social platform. It doesn't just come down a list of things that you're doing to make sure you've got a social media strategy. It's its own beast, and a good beast at that, to manage constantly and generate growth for your audience as many, many people consume content or discover content there. And we are fulfilling that across over 15 of our channels have a separate experience on YouTube managed with outside partners. Some we handle in-house, but you would really need a much more bandwidth if you're trying to take on a lot of channels to do that. So we are big advocates of YouTube. I highly recommend YouTube as a great place for people to start. Find your audience, see if there's a there, as we say, and once you have the analytics and once you see you've got traction, then you might find it valuable to take the take the concept to platforms and say, I've got an audience. What do you think about taking on our AVOD, or what do you think about a fast opportunity? Because look what we've been able to generate on YouTube. I think that is where we'll typically suggest people to start. Don't just start by calling around thinking you're going to get a channel set up for fast just because you have content depth.
Yeah, I really like that idea of starting on YouTube as a testing experimental sort of thing. If you intend to eventually move to fast or AVOD, it's a great idea.
And by the way, it isn't just YouTube either, Peyton. You can a number of companies have found some unique successes on Facebook. Though it's certainly a distant second to YouTube. So there are other places that, there are these unique little content businesses, but historically, even though Fast may have started with a lot of influencer kinds of content on YouTube and brought it over to Fast, that's not what you're seeing so much of late. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's interesting. So meaning that if you're successful on Instagram and that's where your largest following is, or your largest followings on TikTok, it may or may not translate necessarily to the OTT category. And it's unique within social why some things are super successful on Instagram and others, the same brand can't find the same audience on TikTok. So it's really unique to the platforms.
Yeah. And it sounds like a good idea that, you're working with people that are, experts on each particular platform because they're, best positions to optimize your content there. So that's great. Can you talk a little bit about revenues, YouTube compared to Fast, if we can and what you can share? Can you speak a little bit on CPMs and fill rates compared to your traditional pay TV or Fast platforms?
Yeah, they basically live in different unique universes, right? They're not equal. They're not the same. YouTube is a very sophisticated model. Remember how old YouTube is at this point, and what they're able to do, and where their fill rates and their floors of CPMs are going to be a very different number than you would see with respect to FAST. So it's a little bit like apples and oranges when you get into the advertising space. And there are a number of companies that are direct selling on YouTube. If you've got that set up and you are a very large scale brand and have a very large scale audience on YouTube and you know how to sell that, there's certainly a lot of that activity, happening. Though many people will start with you turn over the entire advertising model to YouTube as a trusted partner, and then they take care of all of that heavy lifting. Whereas in FAST, what's been happening is in the early days, everybody was just filling the programming. There weren't full teams of advertising sales executives or representation inside of the platforms. So there was a lot of offers of, I don't know, you can sell the ads. And many people were doing what were called, inventory split agreements, where you were responsible for selling your share, whatever that percentage may be, of the advertising. That was entirely upon you, whether that was direct ad sales, and typically will always get filled with programmatic. The big movement of late on renewals or any new partner that tries to get into the space, most of the platforms now have very sophisticated in-house advertising teams ready to go out there and increase fill rates, get CPMs up, and it isn't as, I wouldn't say easy, but it's certainly not the market that it once was just a few years ago, where you would be able to do it as a content owner on your own and on yourself with your own inventory. So I would say that the two markets are modeled similarly, but I don't believe in the end you can compare the two because they're very different. But ultimately, I do feel like FAST may end up leaning towards where YouTube is today, where it's dominated by the platform, meaning YouTube doing most of the sales with a handful of experts that know their brand and have massive audiences, where they've been selling that for so long they can continue selling directly. But in the universe of 300, 400 FAST channels, I can see that starting to get unwieldy, and the power being with a platform that has all of the channels at their disposal to sell. I can see them becoming much more of the dominant partner. Though we at Cineverse have a fantastic in-house ad sales team that does sell directly and does do an amazing job programmatically. So for us and many others, we love holding the line right now because it's a benefit to us as a business and ultimately our partners.
Right. So with all of that being said, and I know you mentioned that it's sort of an apples to oranges, comparison, but AVOD, do you feel like it's a better opportunity or a better area to invest in right now than FAST?
If you're starting out, I do. I think that if you're a deep-pocketed major brand or major content company, i.e. the studio. So really the major networks and studios, definitely more of the studios, sort of sat on the sidelines until the fall of last year, until the fall of 2023. Then they started to realize there is something happening in this thing called FAST, and all leverage their muscle and money and put themselves into the market with dozens of FAST channels. And it was the game changer that everyone was waiting for, because they ultimately, with the strength and history of their content, were able to come in and dominate the conversation for many, many months with those partners. That's with respect to FAST. But so the FAST model is definitely more challenged. And that's why you have to be ready for the investment. You have to be ready for the long term. You have to be able to handle the risk that if you can't seem to get traction after 9 months, 10 months from when you were starting, there's a good chance after you put all that investment in that you're just going to have to sit on the sideline and wait out the opportunity and live with the loss. Studios can bear that without an issue. But if you're a singular content company, you're not going to be able to, that's a lot tougher. Whereas with AVOD, it's very much the go-to model. It's selective, it's choice, it's leaned in. And I do believe, many places and strong partners who really lean heavily into AVOD, like a Tubi as a platform partner, they do extraordinarily well with that type of model because people are in there, they get to discover what's available, and it's all choice. It's not the lean back experience. And FAST, if you remember, there's a huge audience, a huge amount of an addressable market in the US that actually may not even know what they're watching, that they just think it's another version of what used to be, your linear cable feed when they're scrolling through it. The difference is instead of seeing ESPN, they're seeing, whatever the dog whisperer channel, or they're seeing something else. They're like, oh, that may be unique. That's new to me. But I don't believe they would know necessarily that that's something different from what they were scrolling through all of a few years ago when linear used to dominate the scene. So AVOD's, much more choice oriented. It's where a lot of the streamers operate today, and it's an experience that most television consumers or audiences are very familiar with. So I think that's where we'll always typically recommend, as we just talked about, YouTube and AVOD is the best way, least expensive way, and probably the smartest way to get into the streaming space today.
Got it. That's really interesting. I mean, what you mentioned about FAST, and a lot of times, the viewers don't necessarily know that it is FAST. They're just scrolling through these channels. Can you talk a little bit about your channel specifically, and if there are certain channels that tend to perform better because they are brand names or that they are, IP that's recognizable? Does that affect your guys' strategy for FAST?
Yes, we have, our models great at Cineverse because we don't try to be what I'll call them the big utilities, right? We all have them. We know who they are, and they do a great job with their tech, opening doors, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, and we continue to wish them great success because they're really doing the heavy lifting by building big bulk audiences that are attracted to streaming. Where Cineverse plays is we focus very much on fandoms and very specific audiences that are loyal, they're communicative back to us. It's a two-way type of relationship. And for us, we play in those really, you can call them sort of like target clusters, but we dominate in horror. We picked up the Bloody Disgusting brand. It's called Screenbox when you get into the channel universe, but it's a very specific horror crowd. Even within horror, you've got a lot of little subgenres, but we've got a great team that dominates the vertical all the way through, not only with FAST and AVOD and subscription, all three of which are part of it, but they have a huge podcast network, continuing different stories, both scripted and non-scripted. We reach out to fandoms directly. There's merchandise, there's physical goods, some of which will be on display and on an end cap in a major retailer this coming into the summer. And they're amazing at that. And yet here we are. The next big vertical we talked about is anime. We've got Retro Crush. There's another major player out there, but that anime audience is super dedicated, so much so that we splintered off Yu-Gi-Oh! As a singular IP brand. We have a partnership with Konami, and we're able to take that out as a fast channel. It's available on AVOD. It's available on TVOD, because that audience within Yu-Gi-Oh! Alone is a unique audience who also like anime, but they're super loyal to that one particular series, and that's both classic and a new audience of kids. We have Dove Channel, which is much more family friendly. It's a bit like our version of Hallmark content that dominates. It's definitely family oriented, female oriented, but it's got a faith friendly attitude, and again, a very unique audience. And we do this continuously, and we just picked up for, you probably know, since COVID, more and more people adopted and brought pets into their lives. And we're going back out with Dog Whisperer and found an entirely new audience and are having an amazing success wherever we've been placing that channel as a fast channel around the globe. And we'll continue to look at that because, we know pets is a very specific audience. So again, that's our approach to it. And we look to go all the way down to these audiences as much as we can, including live events, podcasting. So we don't look as a like, we're not a one trick streamer, like one avenue for that one particular channel. We try to get everywhere we can to reach those audiences and communicate with them and bring them back content that they want. So we're not doing anything in a vacuum.
Well, that's great. I mean, the last thing that I want to kind of touch on is licensing content. You just described a lot of the different channels you have with, the Dove channel, Dog Whisperer, you've got the Screenbox horror. How do you determine whether you're going to keep content for one of those owned and operated services versus licensing content to third parties for their own services? How do you kind of balance that?
We balance that very delicately. We have a new programming in-house programming executive that's phenomenal that we just brought in, and that is a lot of discussion that we take very seriously with respect to windowing, right? So we are really clear about our strategy to grow subscriber counts by having these key signature movies or a signature series that matches that subscription audience, but you are in some respects sacrificing a pay one window if you have a movie, if you put it on your own service. So we really go out to do what's best for the title, what's best for the audience, and ultimately, not to be naive about it, what's the ideal, revenue opportunity. We have had really good offers from competitive services that are in the exact same genre where we would not license that out necessarily. But we're really judicious title by title of what we're going to keep or what we're going to license to a bigger audience. And I think the best example is if we think we can get a broader reach by licensing it to another subscription service first or taking something out to an AVOD avail, you don't have to look far. I know everyone's talked about it ad nauseum with Netflix picking up Suits and reestablishing this national interest in a many years old TV series for obvious reasons of some of the cast. But regardless, they made the property much more valuable now. So Universal, NBC Universal, I believe owns that, has a much bigger property now that has been seen much more widely than it ever did, probably even in its original airing. And now they have something a lot more valuable. So that is a consideration. We've taken things out. We just took out an original movie to Peacock, and that made much more sense before we platformed it ourselves, so we can develop a wider audience on a movie called it's a documentary feature called Represent around the U.S. Olympics. Our first entry with a female surfing team into the Olympics that features Kobe Bryant as their mentor, which we think is the last time he was in any kind of film of this nature before he passed. And it's getting a much, much broader audience that way than if we just put it on one of our channels like Dove or something that it'll come back to ultimately. But right now, it just made more sense to go broadly. So again, we look at this title by title. What's the best for the title, and ultimately what's the best for the audience, and then what's going to make the most business sense for us as a company.
Sure. And I think that's the perfect way to end it. I mean, we talk about all these different platforms and fast OTT or YouTube, owned and operated services versus third party. But at the end of the day, it's the content that's king. So that's a great way to sum it up, Mark. So appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. And we'll be back soon.
Thank you, Peyton. Thank you for having me. And it's been lovely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Inside Content, the TV industry podcast brought to you by 3Vision. With decades of TV industry experience and real-world success, we know the ins and outs of the market like nobody else. To learn more about our TV consultancy services, head to 3vision.tv.